Welcome to 12 Ounce Sports Radio and The Burn with Mitch Show. Here's your host, Mitch Bernstein.
And a good evening to everyone in the radio world listening to 12 Ounce Sports Radio Network. 12 Ounce Sports Network. This is your host, Mitch Bernstein, on the Burn with Mitch show. We had a really terrific day today in the Philadelphia area weather-wise. It was gorgeous. It's going to stick around for a while, so spring is on the way. Unfortunately, that's going to change next week. I see the weather report. It's going to get cooler, but got to enjoy it while you can. So, hope everybody's doing okay. The pandemic is still with us. However, more and more people are getting their shots, which is a great thing. In fact, my wife got her first shot today. Woo! And I get mine tomorrow. Woo woo! So yeah, that's exciting. It is a big sigh of relief if you've gotten yours. Way to go. In due time, everybody will be getting theirs, it looks like. So it's a great thing. Lots of things going on in the sports world. Welcome to the show. We have got a busy one, so let's get to it right away. Major League Baseball, spring training in full swing. Beautiful thing to watch. Lots of things going on there. NHL still moving. NBA still moving. Just had their All-Star game. I didn't watch the Oprah interview either with the part of the royal family who are not the part of the royal family, but that's neither here nor there. NFL, I guess they put their franchise tags on people today in their off season. And this Sunday is exciting for many people around the country. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because it's Selection Sunday. Yes, and the NCAA tournament is back, played in venues in and around the Indianapolis area, which is fine, as long as we get to watch. And that means lots of people are going to be entering those pools. So it's an exciting time for the folks who love sports. Golf is still going on. Bryson DeChambeau hit the ball 370 yards on a drive last Saturday. Pretty amazing. So I those of us who like to watch golf, we got that too. What do we have tonight? That's a good question. First off, I'm very excited to have very popular gentleman in the Philadelphia area at 6:15. Rob Maaddi will be on. You can find Rob at ROBMAADDI. We're going to be talking Eagles and Phillies. Rob is an AP NFL Eagles and Phillies beat writer, host of a show on 97.5 The Fanatic, Faith on the Field. And we're going to talk a little bit about that show that he has there. So Rob will be joining us at 6:15. 6:45, Evan Carroll, a sports writer for PhiladelphiaSportsNation.com. You can find him at ECAR27. We'll be talking Sixers and their progress as they get to the second half of their season, so to speak, with the All-Star game having taken place, like I mentioned, this past weekend. Find out who he thinks the Sixers might get in a trade. And Evan will be followed by author Dave Jordan, and you can find David Jordan at InStream Sports. And we're going to talk about his upcoming book about Dave Parker, Pittsburgh, very famous and a long-time player in Major League Baseball with the Pirates and Reds and other teams. And the name of the book was Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood. And David has another book out. It's called Fastball John. And David created the first athlete-author online platform. And he'll be with us to talk about the book and a little bit about Dave Parker at 7:05. And we'll end the show tonight, beginning at 7:30 with a woman who covers the Chicago Cubs, Sarah Sanchez. You can find Sarah on Twitter at BCB_Sarah, SARA, talking Cubs with her. She's involved with Bleed Cubby Blue for SB Nation and co-host of the Cup of Cubby Blue. I'm guessing that's a podcast. So a big show, talking all sorts of things. But first, before we get there, I've got a couple of shout-outs. First one goes to a young lady who is doing some hard work, working for some interesting people. Caitlin Seligman. Hi, Caitlin. Welcome to the show. Glad you could be with my social media manager, Kelsey. I hope you enjoy the sports talk, and I'm glad you're with Kelsey, enjoying her company. And Sean's, by the way. And then another shout out, very important. There's been a group here in Philadelphia working like the Dickens to get Dick Allen in the Hall of Fame. I've talked about this on the show. He is well deserving. Lots of objective and subjective information out there that should tell the Hall of Fame folks that Dick Allen belongs in the Hall of Fame. He is not in the Hall of Fame. He missed it by one vote several years ago. But he was inducted into the Phillies Hall of Fame last baseball season. As many of you know, Dick passed away a little while ago, and Mark Carfagno and his team have been tirelessly working to get this to happen, to get Dick in the Hall of Fame. And what came up last week was that wouldn't it be nice if the Phillies wore a number 15 patch to honor Dick Allen? So an email went out and saying, people were saying, I don't think the Phillies are going to do it. It would be nice, but they're not. I don't think they will. Well, the next day it was announced that the Philadelphia Phillies are going to wear a patch on the uniforms, number 15, honoring Dick Allen. So, Mark Carfagno and group, congratulations. People are seeing the fruits of your labor. I know I saw an email from Dick Allen's, I believe it was his nephew, thanking you, Mark, and the whole group for backing Dick Allen. And it's great that the Phillies have also stood behind that. So, way to go. Good shout out. Proud to shout out Mark on this. All right, that's our show. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick stick around. We're going to take a quick break for 2 minutes, and we'll come back, talk a little bit about some things going on, and we'll have Rob Motti on at 6:15. So take a listen to what we've got, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Change your game with the all-new Pro Rock Hockey Stick. a Canadian company providing a top-of-the-line twig at an affordable price. Pro Rock sticks are extremely lightweight, balanced, and provide the perfect kick point. Get your fully customized stick today at ProRock.com. Play like a Pro Rock.
And we are back. You're listening to 12 Ounce Sports Network, the Burn with Mitch show. Your host, Mitch Bernstein, with 4 guests this evening, looking at Rob Motti in just a few minutes, talking a little bit of Eagles and some Phillies. Evan Carroll from Philadelphia Sports Nation will be talking about the Sixers coming up at 6:45. David Jordan will be here at 7:05 talking about his new book. It comes out in April, actually, so we're getting a nice little treat getting to hear some information about his new book before it actually hits the stands, but you can pre-order it. And Sarah Sanchez will be on at 7:30 to talk about the continue our MLB roundup, talking a little bit of MLB National League Central about the Chicago Cubs. And get some information about who she thinks is going to make the starting lineup, who's going to be playing second base, and because they've got their outfield pretty well set. They got a couple of openings in the infield, and we're going to go around the horn and check on the rotation, the relief, their infield, outfield. Where does she think they have weaknesses, and where does she think the Cubs finish? And good news for many of us baseball fans that I think after the show last week, some point, Major League Baseball here, especially here in Philadelphia, which is where I live in the area, announced that they'll be allowing fans at the ballpark. And the fans here will number 8,800 at Citizens Bank Park. And in Cubland, in Wrigleyville, they're going to be allowing 8,300, about 25%, I believe 20% here is Citizens Bank Park. So we're all excited about that. Tickets go on sale on Friday to the public. If you bought tickets, this was very nice. You bought tickets last year and you kept the credit on the account. On Thursday, if you're a Phillies fan and you got that email from the Phillies, you can call in and use your credit for tickets for the first 19 games, except for opening day. So I am going to I'm going to do that, and then on Friday it opens up to the general public for any tickets, including opening day. I have never been to an opening day. It's my only time I've ever worked. I would have been working, but not working because I'm on break, to be able to go to an opening day game. I need to get there. I will not be at work. I will be not wanting to watch the game on TV. I'm going to want to be there. So I'm hoping to get in on Friday and get my tickets for opening day. And I'm sure hoping I can get that. Season ticket holders get first dibs. Hopefully they won't gobble them all up. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to talking in just a few minutes to Rob Motti, well-known beat writer here in the Philadelphia area. I'm going to talk a little Eagles first because it's interesting to hear what's going on with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts and now Jeffrey Lowry in the mix as the owner. And I want to get his thoughts, Rob's, about what's happened. Rob does his Faith on the Field show, which is based on faith. And Carson Wentz is a man of faith. And, do those things mix? And so we'll ask Rob about that. Hello, Rob. How are you? This is Mitch. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Mitch, how are you?
I'm doing terrific, Rob. How are you? You in Florida right now?
Yes, I am.
You are one lucky son of a gun. But Rob, guess what? We
What's
had
up, buddy?
we had a beautiful day in Philadelphia today.
Awesome. Awesome.
Oh, it was amazing. I was inside for most of the day. This morning, mid-30s, you woke up, still had to wear your jacket. And then I walked outside, and it was about 1:30, and it was a little bit breezy and a little chill. But when I went back outside at 3:30, it was like spring had sprung, Rob. It was awesome.
Oh, gotta love it. I know the temperatures are going to be great there this weekend, so enjoy. I love
Oh
to
my
see that.
gosh, can't wait. Well, Rob, listen, thanks for calling. I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to do this. Um, Lots of things going on, obviously in Phillies land, but I really wanted to start with Eagles, and then move our way into the Phillies. And I know that you have a radio show, Faith on the Field. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I wanted to talk about Carson, because there's lots of things that have been talked about with Carson, who's a big, huge man, a man of faith, right? He is a very religious man, and as was Nick Foles. And I read Nick Foles' book, and as a Jewish man, I didn't necessarily relate to a lot of the things that he said about Christ, okay, just because I'm Jewish. But what I believed when I read Nick Foles' book was he was just a believer. And I believe the same way spiritually, in that if you're a good person in general, good things will happen. And you don't have control of your life, but of things necessarily that happen. You put your trust. I believe in fate in terms of, like meeting my wife back in 1980. Who knew? I didn't know I was going to go to Peoria, Illinois and meet my wife. I was lucky. I never thought I was going to get married. I was so shy in talking to women and girls. But it all worked out. And I want to know from your point of view, Carson, again, he has these values, but did we hear properly that he didn't necessarily use those values in the locker room? What were your thoughts when you heard about this kind of stuff with Carson?
I think there was a lot of false narratives, and there was a lot of misinformation spread about Carson Wentz, and sometimes you just have to consider where it's coming from. And when you're a strong man of faith, as he was, and someone with strong character, integrity, and principles, people are going to look for ways to attack you. And there's going to be opposition, and there's going to be those who don't have either similar beliefs, or those who look at you in a different way, who want to see you knocked down a peg. So I knew Carson and knew him very well, knew what he stood for, know what kind of man he is. And I think that a lot of the misinformation that was spread about him was just false and completely inaccurate. Now, I will say that he's a quiet guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's shy. He's awkward. He's introverted. And sometimes that translates in a way where those who don't know him that well may think he is arrogant or standoffish
Mm-hmm.
or cocky. But in fact, he's just quiet, shy, and uncomfortable speaking in the public eye and being outward and being somebody who he's just so introverted. And I think as the quarterback of a team, as the leader, that's something that he probably needs to work on
Mm-hmm.
in Indianapolis when he gets there, because you have to be vocal, you have to be an outgoing personality. And that's something that he needs to work on. But I don't believe that the people who would. Here's the deal, Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime we heard anything negative about Carson, it was somebody anonymously saying it.
Okay.
Anytime we heard any player with any clout speak on Carson, they spoke about him in positive ways and heaped praise upon him. So I'll take the words of Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox and Boston Scott and Jason Peters and guys who've who've praised him on the record, and I'll take that over one or two anonymous people with an agenda.
Yeah, because, an older guy, I've watched sports and listened to these athletes for years. I just had a hard time, again, and as a fan, you don't know what to believe. We're not on the inside. And to have heard all of this from a guy who just felt like, again, just full of terrific values, family man, like you said, leader, a believer, in God, in Christ. And how does this guy how does it not translate? And that's what, I'm hearing from you, that he does have to get better at his persona, because other folks, these anonymous folks who you just said, probably were off-put. But so how does he work on that, Rob? How does he, it's hard to change. I mean, he's a young kid, okay. Was that something that then the Eagles didn't help him with and recognize? Because it's hard to change. As an adult, I don't care where you are, how does one do that now that he's with Indianapolis? Will that's going to be a Frank Reich thing? Is Frank aware of this? I'm sure he is. And what he's got to do to get Carson out of the shell.
Well, Frank and Carson have a great relationship. They get along very well, and I don't think this will be an issue in Indianapolis. I don't think anything is going to be as magnified, as intensely scrutinized as it is in Philadelphia. And you have to understand, too, that it's impossible to please everybody. No matter who you are, you're never going to have 53 people in a locker room plus an entire practice squad of guys who all believe in you or all like you or all want to be friendly with you. And sometimes you're going to have guys even on the offense where, hey, if you're not throwing a ball to a certain person, he may have a problem with that and he may badmouth you. So I think all quarterbacks have had to deal with things like that throughout their careers. So I don't know how much Carson Wentz he can't change who he is, and he has to stay true. He's got to stay true to his values and stay true to his beliefs. Now, if there's a way where he could be a little bit more outgoing or be a little bit more relatable to everybody in a locker room, I think there are ways you can do that, and I don't anticipate that being a problem. I saw how players on the Colts reacted to the news when he was traded, and guys on the defense, guys on the offense, and texting him and then posting screenshots of their conversation because they were that excited to get Carson Wentz on board. So ultimately it comes down to winning in the NFL, and if you're a winning quarterback, you make a lot of friends, and if you're losing, people will look to pick you apart.
Yeah, I mean, yes, in general, that's exactly right. They want to figure out a way to knock you down a peg. Listen, again, I think he's got we all saw 2017. We all saw what he did the last 4 games of 2 years ago. And then he got clunked on the head. The guy's got talent. My other question then, Rob, is was he really, and we heard about this from Mortensen today, I think. Was he really that affected when they drafted Jalen Hurts?
I think that had some impact on maybe his confidence level when he came off a 2019 season where there were a lot of injuries on the team. The offensive line, the wide receiver core was depleted by the end of the season, and basically it was a practice squad of skill position players surrounding Carson Wentz, and he played exceptionally well in December, led the team to 4 straight wins. Each win they had to have, all must-wins, win or you're eliminated, and they get into the playoffs, and then he takes that cheap shot, and he gets knocked out after 9 plays. And I thought perhaps he expected, coming off of that strong finish, that the team would do everything in its power to build around him and bring in more weapons. And when you spend a high pick like number 53 in the draft in the second round in Jalen Hurts, and on a quarterback that you don't need, it's a position of luxury, not a position of necessity. I would imagine that had a little bit of impact on his psyche. I'm not sure how much, Obviously, he had a terrible season. There were a lot of factors involved there too. He didn't play well. The offense didn't play well. The coaching staff didn't coach well. Injuries affected the team top to bottom. And overall, it was just a bad football team. So if Carson Wentz last year played at his 2017 level, I don't think they're anything more than an 8-win team.
Right.
And, yeah, that would have won you a division in the NFC East, but that's about it. But ultimately, there were a lot of factors that I think contributed to his decline. And it was a colossal collapse because we saw where he was and then we saw where he ended up. And it was by the end, for me, it was pretty apparent and pretty clear that it was time to move on for both sides.
Yeah, it's such a shame because, again, I actually was in LA when he went down in that game. And everybody, it was just crazy. There was so much fun to watch. And listen, I'm not a huge Eagles fan. I love watching NFL football. I've watched it for, since I was 10, so for 55 years. And I love watching the game because there's so many stars on each team, and it's just so much fun to watch the game change as it has a little bit. Now you got all these great young quarterbacks that, in the Fran Tarkenton era, if you will, like you're scrambling and being able to make plays. It's really kind of fun to watch. But he was also he's talented. It's in there. It's like Rob. Do you play golf at all?
No, not at all. I still play baseball, softball, and football. Yeah.
Okay. But, as a guy, I haven't played golf in 10 years, but when you were able to hit that one shot, right, at one point, you're on a hole, and you hit a crappy drive, and you're laying 6 on a par 4, and you're 100 yards away. Then you hit your pitching wedge within like 5 feet of the cup. It's there. You got the talent. It's there. You just got to hone it. Well, we know he has the talent, but they just didn't support him this past couple of years with the weapons, and it's a shame because if they had, it could have been different.
Yeah.
But I think what he's thinking, and you'll probably say the same thing. Listen, this is the way it is. I'm going to follow my direction where I'm at now. And I'm going to do the best I can to help this team win. And I wish him the best. I hope he goes out and they get to the playoffs and do something.
Yeah, and I anticipate they will because I think he's joining a great situation for him. The Indianapolis Colts are already a playoff team. They went there last year with Phillip Rivers, who was at the end of his career last season that he played in the NFL. He obviously retired, and they have a pretty good team around him. They do have some holes. They're going to have to address wide receiver. They're going to have to bring in a left tackle. But Carson Wentz thrived under Frank Reich, and I think Frank Reich understands how to maximize Carson Wentz's abilities. And for that reason, I think it's just a perfect fit for him. And beyond that, he and Carson have a great relationship, a friendship, and I think that's going to help them too. There's some familiarity there with Press Taylor, who's part of the offensive coaching staff in Indianapolis. He just left Philly. And Mike Groh, who had been in Philly and was fired, even though Doug Peterson didn't want to fire him.
Right.
So I believe it's set up perfectly, Mitch, for Carson Wentz to have success there. But it's got to play out. He's got to go out there and do it.
And I think he will. I really do. I think he's got, with all these guys, all the support around him, he's got to go in there with confidence. I think he will. And I hope he does well. I really do. All right. Time to switch gears to the Phillies. My Phillies. I'm a baseball geek. So another interesting issue has cropped up in center field. So Moniak is hitting the crap out of the ball, I guess, huh? And Kingery isn't looking good. And is it going to be a 2-horse race with Odubel and Mickey Moniak, maybe? What are you thinking in center field there, Rob?
I think Scott Kingery might end up being the guy when all's said and done. Although Odubel Herrera, if he plays the way he's capable of and has been, he was an all-star obviously in 2016. He's got a chance. There's still the extenuating issues with Odubel and all the off-the-field stuff that it seemed. Joe Girardi made it clear the other day that Odubel Herrera cannot be prevented from making the team for all of those reasons, for everything off the field. He's got to be – it was collectively bargained that you're going to have to cut a player based on what he does on the field. So I think it comes down to Odubel and Scott Kingery. They invested a lot in Kingery. Mickey Moniak can still use some more seasoning. He can still move some more at-bats in Triple-A. Adam Hazley being injured obviously takes him out of the running. So maybe there's a platoon. There could be a potential platoon, right-handed hitting Kingery, left-handed hitting Odubel Herrera. Roman Quinn's a guy who, to me, projects as a fourth, fifth outfielder. Andrew McCutchen in left field is going to need some time off. He's not going to play 162. So there's opportunity to get somebody else some at-bats by playing left field. You'll probably get Cutchen there for 130. Maybe it's the target. So center field is still up for grabs, man. And it's you got 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks left in spring training for somebody to take hold of that center field position, and it's a really interesting battle. The Phillies do have some options there, and I would anticipate it maybe coming down to the final week.
Yeah, it's probably good. You're right. Unless somebody just totally blows up and doesn't do anything. It's good. Well, and for me, it's fun. It's fun that they have this opportunity to, and like you said, even if they have to platoon and the righty-lefty thing, it's still going to get these guys enough at bats to kind of stay in the game and get their eye on the ball. But Odubel's got to play smart baseball, and that's the other thing, that he's got to do, and hopefully he will. Forgetting the stuff off the field. And then, people are going to, say they asked on the radio today, are people going to boo him if he comes up to the plate and he makes the team? Unfortunately, these things carry on. But Joe Girardi said, listen, he believes in people, giving people second chances. Most people do. And he's got to prove he said earlier, I think it was the first press conference, he has got to prove to him, Joe, the organization and the players that he belongs there, not just on the field but off the field. So, he's got to do the right thing. So, we'll see what happens. I love the infield. I love JT being back. I mean, Alec Bohm. Holy mackerel! What was this kid? Just absolutely fun to watch last year when he came up.
Yeah, he really was, and I think that he's got such incredible potential. I've seen his defensive performance at third base has improved, and I think that's a strong sign, because that was his major area of weakness, and some people thought maybe he'd end up being more of a first baseman and a DH, but he's played better defensively at third base, and then offensively he hit .338 last year. He had 4 homers. This year he's got a little bit more lower body strength, and I think that he will be a guy who, as he becomes more mature as a hitter, will start to drive the ball, and his power numbers will start to show up. I do think that Alec Bohm eventually is going to be a 25 or more homer guy, and if he can hit around, I don't anticipate .338 every year, but if he can hit around 300, that would be tremendous for the Phillies. What I love about him as a hitter is that he was a guy who would not look to pull the ball. He would hit it where it's pitched. He
Absolutely.
would go the opposite way. He'd slap singles to right field. And you need those kind of guys in a lineup. And he has the luxury of being in the Phillies lineup that's solid, top to bottom. So you can hit him anywhere from 2 to 7. You don't have to put him right now in that 2, 3, 4, 5 spot. You could keep the pressure off and have him lower in the batting order and allow him to continue to mature as a hitter. And I think his level, the bar for Alec Bohm is really high. And he's got potential to be a legitimate all-star at third base.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Legit. I was thinking the same thing. All-star. To watch him, and he swings so easy. To me, he seems like a natural hitter. Yes, when he went to right field all that time last year, I was like, look at this kid. He's hitting the ball where his sport's pitched. It's a beautiful thing to see. Oh my God! And then, like you said, yes, if he can improve his defense, I mean, you've got, now they all do, right? They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year, just in 60 games. But I think they're going to have. They're good, like we said. What were they, fourth in the league last year in runs scored? They keep that up. You go to the pitching. You go to the rotation. 1, 2, and 3 is pretty darn good if Eflin can keep up what he's done. And 4 and 5, I was talking to one of our guests last week. They got a pretty good shot. I think they got a pretty good shot in this division to sneak up on some people. What are your thoughts on that?
I see them as an 85-win team and the potential to win more if things break right, if players stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Injuries are a big factor. Pitching staff is going to be obviously of importance. And to me, this is a team that significantly improved the historically bad bullpen last year. They got more arms back there. They got guys who throw hard. They have guys like Tony Watson who just know how to pitch. And I anticipate that the bullpen will be a strength, or at least improved upon that. And how bad could it be? Or it can't be much worse, really, right?
Oh, yes.
So they got some depth also in the starting rotation because they added Chase Anderson, Matt Moore, and Spencer Howard, and Vince Velasquez can compete for that 4th and 5th spot. And whoever doesn't get it, 2 of those guys can go to the pen and strengthen the pen. So we know they can score runs. We know they can hit. They finished 5th in the league last year in runs scored, and I think they'll be right around that mark. Pitching is going to be the key. So if things break right, guys stay healthy, I think they could challenge for a 90-win season. I'm not going to predict that, though, at this point. I feel comfortable in the 85 range, and that would keep them in a mix for a wild card spot towards the final week, you would think.
I'm the same way. I think, if you look at the league itself, if you look, take it by division, you're looking at San Francisco. I mean, you're looking at the Dodgers and the Padres. The Central is wide open to me. I don't know, and I have Sarah Sanchez coming up talking about the Cubs at 7:30. I'll get her take, but they got a lot of guys back, and 60 game season last year. They didn't all perform well. They were 34-26. Let's not say they weren't that good, and they were in the wild card game. But Central, could it be the Cubs and the Cardinals? And then you're looking at this now. You're looking at this division. This is holy mackerel. Why do we have to be in this division, for crying out loud? They all got better. So if it's not a division, I think, like you said, if they can get to 80, even 88, I think it's a wild card. And again, with this top 3, even the top 2 in a wild card series, I like our chances.
Yeah, and if you can get to that spot, get to that point with Wheeler, with Nola, I like Zach Eflin as a 3, and at this, if they're in contention, you never know what they might do at the trade deadline. Maybe they're lacking. Maybe they need to bring in another arm or something like that, and I think that they potentially could make a deal and land somebody else too. So. To me, this is a team that there should be some optimism about and some excitement about, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the 2021 Phillies can do, because it's been a long time since we've seen October baseball and games that matter down there, and I'm excited to see a red October. Hopefully, the Phillies can make it happen.
Yeah, I'm excited because they announced last week 8,800 folks in the ballpark. Before you came on, I was telling you folks that, I have a credit for my tickets for last year. I can get on Thursday. They're giving those folks with a credit to buy tickets for any of the first 19 games except the opening day. So I'm definitely going to try and get to that first Saturday game. And then Friday, they open up the phone lines to get tickets. And Rob, this is the only opening day I have a chance to go to. Every other opening day in 25 years I've been here, I had to work. Damn it, I've got to get these opening day tickets.
Go for it, man. Go for it. Make it happen.
I gotta get lucky, right? I gotta get lucky. So I think people should be excited in this area for this team. It's if, like you said, if everything breaks the way it could, barring injuries, I think it's going to be very fun at the ballpark, very competitive, and looking forward to seeing what 4 and 5 end up doing. What will Spencer Howard do? Real quickly, I've got a couple minutes. Hector or Bradley as the closer? What are your thoughts?
I think obviously Girardi's got some options there. Brandon Kinsler also is another possibility. But I think Archie Bradley might end up being the guy. Hector Neris has had success in the eighth inning role. I would probably, right now with 3 weeks to go in spring training, I would lean towards Archie Bradley coming out of spring as the closer, Hector being the eighth inning guy or high leverage guy. Same with he's got options now with Kinsler, with Watson, with Jose Alvarado, who hit 100, I believe, the other day on the radar gun. So, and Hector's been throwing or trying to bring back a slider, which he hadn't thrown in a couple of years, and that could be an effective pitch for him. So that gives the Phillies and Joe Girardi a lot of options down in that pen, and at least they don't have, that it's going to be a strength for them this year.
Yeah.
And that's going to be key, man. And that's going to be huge in helping them be able to put together a winning season. Because last year they blew 21 leads at each on
Rob,
and
stop.
8 times 3-run lead.
You're killing me. Stop. It hurts. I go back to. I'm having flashbacks. It hurts.
It was bad. All they needed to do was win one more game.
Oh, Rob, I know. Whenever he would go to the bullpen, I think all of us, we were like kind of like turning our backs to the TV, going and squinting and cringing. That's what I'm doing now. I'm cringing. I'm like, oh God, who's going to do it now? Can they do this? No, I didn't think so. So yes, looking forward to getting some more stability at the back of that bullpen for sure. Absolutely. Oh man. So Rob, are you coming back up here at some point?
Yeah, I'll be there for opening day. All
right.
That's my first day back.
Lucky you, my friend. Lucky you. Well, listen, speaking of lucky, I feel lucky to have had you on. I really appreciate you taking the time. Amazing amount of knowledge and information you've given me in the last 22 or 27 minutes. And I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I look forward to chatting again in the future. Thank you.
All right, that'd be great, Rob. Thank you very much. Stay safe down there.
You too. Thank you, man. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye. So Rob is very optimistic, as am I. Kind of the same thoughts about that Phillies ball club. And, it's good to hear from somebody on the inside. Speaking of Carson Wentz and the Eagles, as fans, we just don't know. We don't know what's going on the inside. He said he knows Carson Wentz. And a lot of false narratives out there. I can't see a gentleman who is so driven by his faith, which to me is also a person with high character values, that would all of a sudden become a prima donna, somebody who doesn't care. And, Rob said it best. You come across somebody who is a little shy, that's going to come across that way. I believe we have Evan. Hi, Evan. How are you?
Hey, Mitch. How you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Thanks for giving me a call. I really appreciate it. How have you been?
Feeling good, man. How you doing?
Good. Did you get a chance to be outside today?
I did. It was beautiful out.
Oh, man.
Definitely playoff basketball weather, right?
And hockey, too. Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Right.
But that's what we get with the games these days, the seasons these days. Spring weather with playoffs, which is not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. So let's talk about the Sixers. Question for you. Have you heard anything about Embiid and Simmons and their test results? Did they get tested again with that contact with the barber? Do you know anything?
Yeah, well, as of now, I believe all we know is that they as far as I know, that they have tested negative, which is good news.
Mm-hmm.
Not only have they tested negative, but they do have to quarantine. At least I think Simmons is until Saturday and then Embiid till Friday, so that would leave them both out for Thursday against the Bulls.
Okay. So not a big deal, but and they're probably going to get tested every day, I guess, until their quarantine is over, and after it's over.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah. So listen, again, knock on wood for them and for the team. Good news. I guess they won't be going to that barbershop for a while.
Yeah, probably not.
They gotta find somebody else to go cut their hair. Well, that's good because what have they played? 30. What? How many games have they played now?
I believe it is 33, 34, maybe somewhere in that range.
So the team is doing well. Are they meeting your expectations from the beginning of the season?
I mean, they're in first place in the Eastern Conference. I think if somebody told me halfway through the season they'd be leading the entire Eastern Conference, I think we'd all be happy, right? With that being said, they are only a half a game above the Nets, and with Embiid and Simmons being out at least for Thursday's game against the Bulls, and maybe we'll see about Friday against the Wizards. It'll give the Nets some chance to catch them ground on the Sixers. So let's hope for the best with that. Luckily, they got two pretty not easy opponents, but ideal opponents.
Yes, and listen, this really couldn't have come at a better time for them, right? You got a break. You don't have any games. I mean, the game's not until today's Tuesday, and you don't play until Thursday. So we'll see what happens. Listen, the Bulls are 16-18. They're in Chicago, but like you said, what'll be impressive is if they don't play, can the rest of the team step up and compete? And listen, a true test for the rest of the guys is going to be, can they beat these guys?
Right,
and team, right, without the two big guys.
Right, and remember the 76ers instead of the 76ers? We're kind of going back to those days. I'm not really sure who's gonna score for the Sixers. Tobias Harris, maybe he's angry he didn't get a All-Star game nod, but we'll see who's gonna score.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the team, with the games on Thursday, and again Friday they are at Washington again. If they're back, it should be a win, and if they're not, it could also be a win. So the schedule breaks out well for them right now, and then the next game after that is home against San Antonio, and they're 18-14. So they're in decent shape. They're in real decent shape, and like you said, yes, who would have thunk it that they would be where they are in the Eastern Conference right now? Here's the thing I got to ask, Evan. Blake Griffin with the Nets, does that make any difference?
No, they still don't have somebody to guard Embiid.
And that's what I read. Yeah, that's what I was reading. Okay, go ahead.
Right. I mean, Embiid's been obviously on a tear. He currently is the favorite to win MVP. Mm-hmm. I don't see anybody on their team that's going to guard him. They can score with the best of them. I mean, give it to them. I believe the Nets are obviously their biggest threat to the Eastern Conference. But I mean, I think in a 7-game series, I really do think the Sixers take it over the Nets.
And that's going to be, listen, we watched Embiid and Simmons last week play well together. That hadn't really happened a lot. And when Embiid was out, Simmons stepped up. So are they learning? Is Ben specifically learning now a more aggressive role for himself, even when Joel is in?
Absolutely. I mean, Ben Simmons has definitely heard the calls that we've made for him: shoot more, be more aggressive, da. But he's honestly, he really has stepped up, and maybe not in the jump shot range, but he's just been more aggressive. He's going to the basket. He's obviously playing stellar defense as he always has. If anything, he should be the forefront for Defensive Player of the Year right now.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. Yeah, he is really good at that playing defense, and the team itself is playing as a team. I haven't been a huge basketball fan in this area for many, many years, since the Iverson days, and again, I wasn't a huge basketball fan then, but I kind of jump on the bandwagon and watch a team where you're living and they're playing well. I've watched more basketball this year than I have in the past 10, 15 combined, because of who they got on this team, and they're not selfish and they're playing together. To me, and you'll definitely agree, it's coming from the coach.
Absolutely. I mean, what was the biggest problem in the past couple of years with the Sixers?
I don't know.
I mean,
I didn't really watch. It was the coach. To me, it was the coach.
It's got to be the coach, right? They haven't gotten past the second round of a playoff game since, who knows?
Right.
And it all goes back on the coach. And Doc Rivers has done an unbelievable job, not only coaching, just monitoring the players with taking Embiid out. Embiid has rested less this year than he has in the past years with Brett Brown, and he seems to hit all the right buttons.
Yeah, he's got some kind of formula that is allowing Embiid to play well. He knows. Listen, I think he knows his players, and I think he's putting his players in positions to succeed, and that's a key. The question, though, Evan, that I hear come up is the bench, right? And are they going to, at the trade deadline, March 25th, Morey is not shy. I've learned that about this team and this owner and general manager. He's not shy about making moves. I've heard the name Kyle Lowry come up a lot. Would that be somebody, and who would other players be that they would want to pick up?
Yeah, Kyle Lowry is a great player by all means. He just doesn't do it for me personally, for the compensation that you'd be giving up for him. Assuming the compensation would be one of Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thybulle.
Right.
Obviously, we don't know exactly what we have with Maxey yet. When he has played, he's looked unbelievable. And I think we know exactly what we have with Matisse Thybulle. He's a great defender, and he can maybe give you a three ball now and then. Do you really want to play Matisse Thybulle 4 times a year? No.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially against the Raptors, who have always given you trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, Kyle Lowry doesn't do it for me. I don't really think he's that much of an upgrade to this team. Obviously, he would be an upgrade. He just doesn't do it for me. For the compensation. Somebody I would be looking to target would be maybe somebody like P.J. Tucker from the Rockets or George Hill from the Thunder. One of those I think would be a lot. You'd give up a lot less and maybe get similar play from them.
Better return.
Right.
So tell me about these two guys, because I don't know who they are. What are their strengths?
Yes. So P.J. Tucker, he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. He's on the Rockets, and I just think he'd fit the small ball scheme a little bit more than Kyle Lowry would. And George Hill, he's shooting 38% from 3, and he plays stellar defense. So I think he'd fit right in for this team.
38% from 3, is that right? 38%. Oh, man.
Right. We could use it.
Wow. Oh man, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's what people want. People want, what I've read and heard, is that people want something. We need another 3-point shooter, and getting that 3-point shooter. So clarify this for me. Would that open up more of the lane for Joel if they kick it back out and they kick it back in again, or what?
Yeah, I mean, you saw Embiid struggling, and that's part of the reason why Embiid's never looked the way he has until this year. And part of that is injuries, but part of that just is the fact that the Sixers have had no 3-point shooting. So between him and Ben Simmons unwillingness to shoot, it's really easy for the opposing defense just to stand in the lane and then not give Embiid or Simmons a path to the bucket.
Right.
So adding obviously a solidified 3-point shooter, make no mistake about it, P.J. Tucker or George Hill isn't going to win you a bunch of ball games. They're going to be nice role players to Joel Embiid and Simmons. should be and are the focal point of the offense.
Right. So let's talk about upcoming schedule. I was reading something today on ESPN, and I think they were talking about the biggest games for these teams in these power rankings coming up. So and it's not for a while, but April 14th they play the Nets. So it's kind of like the biggest game, biggest game in the second half in essence. And you're saying in a 7-game series, they should win, but that's going to be that's going to get a lot of viewership, that game, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously you got to think that game's going to be televised. I don't know off the top of my head, nationally televised. I don't know off the top of my head that it's going to be, but I'm sure it will. Because at that point you could be talking about still 1 and 2 in the Eastern Conference,
right? And
just the big names: Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, James Harden, Kyrie Irving. Name them off. There's going to be a ton of big names, and obviously will draw in viewership.
It's an all-star game, is what it is, kind of, and that's a Wednesday night. So yeah, I bet you they're going to put that on. You're going to have to.
Did you say that was April 14th?
Yeah.
Okay, so they will be competing with NHL and MLB at that point, but still, I mean, I don't think that's going to change too much on a Wednesday night.
No, not on the Wednesday night. I think people are going to be into that game for sure. The ratings here in Philadelphia are going to go crazy. I'm sure it's going to be nuts to see that one.
Right.
And I looked at the power rankings, and again, according to ESPN, the Sixers are number 3 now, behind Utah and Brooklyn. So nationally, and listen, not that they haven't been nationally been looked at, but I guess as the season goes on and they continue their consistent winning, it's exciting for Philadelphia 76ers fans this year to continue to watch this team. And what more can they do? Is it going to have to be, Evan, again, wait till the trade deadline and see what happens, and then boom, put the pedal to the metal and go type thing?
Yeah. I mean, the trade deadline will definitely help. Daryl Morey being in charge, obviously his first trade deadline as a Sixer, should be interesting. But until then, I think the things we need to look for, definitely the bench stepping up, and Joel Embiid continue to be Joel Embiid. This season he's putting up unbelievable numbers, something big men normally don't do. 30 points a game. The 3-point shooting's been there this year. It's just been locked in all cylinders. And until then, we just sit back and enjoy the best player in the NBA.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, we haven't had that in a long time here either, which is people love it. Yeah, I was watching something else, and I was paying attention on Gamecast. It was last week, and I go, they're going to lose. And the next thing I know on Gamecast, I have my iPad, I go, holy crap, he hit a 3-pointer. They were down 3, and he hit the 3-pointer to put it in overtime. And then they ran over. Who was that? I forget who
that was. The Jazz.
Yeah. There was the Jazz. That's right. They went and they beat the crap out of them in overtime.
That was unbelievable. That was the best basketball game I've watched in quite some time.
It was amazing. And then I forget what I was watching. It was probably an important TV show that I like. But against the Jazz, so you talk about confidence levels going through the roof. Hey guys, listen, we beat this team. We are the same level. Let's go, right? It just, to be a team like that and to beat that team, you can't do anything but just make them go a little bit nuts.
Absolutely, it shows that you can compete with the best of them, and hopefully that'll translate to when they play Brooklyn.
Yeah. So what are your? So I think. I mean, to me, it's Eastern Conference Finals, without a doubt. They play the way they play, and no injuries. They get to the finals. Who do you think they're going to end up? I mean, what do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be? It's going to be it could be a Sixers Nets finals. Is what it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like I said, the names are there. To me, I'm not as scared as Brooklyn as some people are. I just think when you have too many big names on a team, especially names like Harden, Irving, and Durant, they're all people that want the ball in their hands.
They want the ball, yep.
So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out, and then add Blake Griffin into that mix. Who knows? Maybe they might be a one and done for all we know.
Yeah.
They have a ton of talent, and who knows? Maybe we'll be playing the Celtics. Maybe we'll be playing the Pacers. Who knows? By that time, a lot of things might change.
That's true. You're right. You're right. But at this stage of the game, Philadelphia Sixers fans just need to enjoy the ride.
Right. Sit back and watch.
Sit back and watch. It's exactly right. All right, Evan. Listen, it's been a real pleasure having you come on. I really appreciate it. You can find Evan at ECAR27, sports writer for PhiladelphiaSportsNation.com. Hey, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mitch, I appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you again.
We'll do it down the line for sure.
All right, take care.
All right, take it easy, Ev. Bye-bye. All right, Sixers fans. Just sit back and watch. That's all you got to do. It's not that hard. Yeah, I mean, that game last week against Utah was key. And for any team, it's key. When you beat the first place team, you can't have anything but confidence and great stuff from the Sixers and Joel Embiid. And like people said, sit back, watch. They're not going to win every game at all. They're not going to win every game. I think we got David coming on right now. Let's see. We do. Hi, David. How are you?
Mitch, how's it going?
It's going real good, Dave. Where are you calling from?
Princeton, New Jersey.
You're in the East Coast. Did you have a great day today, too, weather-wise, up there?
It was pretty lovely. But I spent most of the day indoors, but I saw the sun rays coming through the window, so all was grand.
Yeah, wasn't that great? I mean, I just told the previous callers I was inside. So I got dressed as I did to go to work. Had the winter jacket on and a sweatshirt because I get cold anyway. And I got in and stayed inside, and then I went out. I have to do part of my work outside a little bit today, and I had a sweatshirt on. It was a little cooler. The sun wasn't shining where I was, but then at 3:30 I went outside. Oh, it was like spring has sprung. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful. All right, Dave, let's talk about your book. I mean, this is, so I got Dave Jordan here. David Jordan. What do you want me to call you, Dave or David?
Dealer's choice. It's all good.
Okay.
But Dave's fine.
Okay, I have David. Dave co-authored a book with another Dave, Dave Parker, formerly of the Pirates and other teams, called Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood. So, Dave, tell me, what inspired you to do this book with Dave Parker?
Well, I'll tell you, after writing Fastball John with John D'Acquisto, I had done a ton of research, and I looked at what else what was next and what hasn't been done yet. I like to kind of challenge myself, and I noticed there weren't so many, after Jackie Robinson, after Hank Aaron, after Dick Allen and Willie Mays, Ernie Banks, there aren't so many books out there, and there's especially nothing significant about, an insider's look at black baseball at the peak.
Mm-hmm.
At the peak of black baseball, the golden age of black baseball is the 50s and the 60s, and but the peak, the actual numerical peak, is the mid 70s, and
right.
There's really nothing about the fellas at that time, and also I'll tell you. I have a mutual friend with Parker who would come to me. He said that Dave was having a tough time getting a book off the ground, and he knew that that I could get it done. I mean, he had read Fastball John, and he was really impressed by it, and he loved it. And he basically told me, he said, after reading Fastball John, I'd love to see what a Cobra book would look like in your hands. And he got me in touch with Dave, and we started talking, and Dave wanted to tell his story, and he really remarkably had never written a book.
Mm-hmm.
He had a couple starts and stops, maybe 2 or 3 times with 2 or 3 different sets of writers, And I was just very honest, and I said, you know, if you want to get this done, we can get this done. You know, if you really want to write a book, we can get this going. And the conversations were great, and it was very much, you know, we got to know each other over a few months. Every Saturday, we'd have some coffee and talk for 45 minutes, and, you know, he would share his life, I would share my life, and he would just tell me kind of what he wanted to convey to all his fans. This really was about a thank you to the fans and all these people and who've been collecting baseball cards and going to the memorabilia shows and, you know, looking at him and reading about him and studying box scores for decades. This is the real story, what really happened. And he wanted to really convey that to the fans. But as we got to know each other, you know, after a while, he said, all right, fine. Here's what I want to do. I want to write an article with you, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay.
So he asked me, what do you want to write about? And I like, the kind of work I like to do is kind of about the subjectivity of decision-making in sports and especially spring training. I have an affinity for that. And I really believe, in many ways, that there's more drama in spring training than there is in the postseason. Because the postseason, you're all trying to figure out who's the best, who's going to eat steak tonight. But in spring training, it's who's going to eat. Period.
Right. Yep.
So, so I said, what if we talked about the politics, spring training, in the wake of the politics of right field in 1973 Pirates spring training in the wake of Clemente's passing? And Parker was like, I know all about that story.
Yeah.
So we did a piece, and Jason Foster at Sporting News was great. He really helped us foster that along, and he published it. And Parker had received some accolades from people he knew and some folks in the game, and that's when he turned to me and said, all right, let's do the book.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, listen, today I listened to a quick clip. I guess it might have been, I don't remember where, it might have been a Pittsburgh station where they talked to him about the book coming out. And he did mention that, they asked him, how did you feel having to, succeed Roberto Clemente? And he said, and as any true, honest player would, I'm not here to be the next Roberto Clemente. I'm here to be, Dave Parker and do what I can to make this team win. But
yeah.
Right? I mean, that's who he is, who he was, right? Who he is.
That's who he was, but there was always a sense that he was the next one. And even Clemente felt that way. Manny Sanguin told me a story once that they were in spring training. It was probably 72, and they had Parker in center field, and he just threw a rocket to home plate. And Clemente's sitting on the dugout bench at the Pirate City in Bradenton, and he's sitting there next to Sanguin, one of his best pals, and he just is laughing. And Sanguin's like, what are you laughing about? It's like, oh, there's my replacement right there. And Sanguin was like, what are you talking about? He's a center fielder. And then Clemente just rose off the bench and smiled and walked past Sanguin saying, I know a right fielder when I see one.
And this is such cool stuff. I mean, yeah, the heyday. Listen, I was in the mid-70s, I was in my 20s, and just a fanatical baseball fan. Loved watching, as much as I didn't like the Pirates because they were beating my Mets at some point. And even in the up through till he continued to play, he was just, again, another one of those players who kind of like a Stargell, who when he went up to the plate, you were scared. This guy was going to crush the damn ball. And I looked up his stats, Dave. I mean, and we'll talk about this in a second, but I didn't know. 2,712 hits, a 290 hitter, and in 15 years in the National League, he hit 297.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
That's a Hall of Famer.
In many ways, it's a Hall of Famer, but and he also was a timely hitter. There's a statistic they like to throw out there sometimes called high leverage, and in high leverage situations, Parker really shined. Throughout his career, he hit 312 in high leverage situations.
Wow.
When the money was down, Dave generally delivered.
And you know what's interesting about this? So as I saw the statistics this afternoon, I was like, holy crap. But back in the day, Dave, back in the day, it was, to me, an unwritten rule that, again, back in the 70s with the Nolan Ryans and the Tom Seavers as pitchers and as hitters, you had to get to that 3,000 hit level, or you weren't in. It wasn't necessarily average, but it was the hits. And he did win Gold Gloves. He won All-Star MVPs. He won an MVP. I mean, but you look at it now. I mean, you talk about, and not necessarily to denote that he's not worthy, but the other guy, and he's better than these guys, I think, who just got in, who were not as good a player. Harold Baines, I mean, nice player, but he doesn't deserve to be in the freaking Hall of Fame. Look at Dave Parker's stats. This guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So did you does he have any strong feelings about that either way?
I think Dave Parker wakes up every morning and knows he's the Cobra, and
Okay.
it's just he knows he can go to Cooperstown on induction weekend and walk into the Osaga Hotel and chill out with all the boys, just like it was nothing. I don't think he feels that he needs to have that validation. He gets that validation wherever he goes, and where he's still highly recognizable, and he's still revered in so many ways, and and there's more than one metric for voting on the Hall of Fame, and the player's record, his quote-unquote statistics, is one of 5 or 6 metrics. One of the other metrics is playing ability. And everybody who was in the 70s, they know that Dave Parker was probably, you want to argue, say he was top 3 most talented player of the 1970s? You can make a great argument he was number 1, the most talented player of the decade, and well into the 80s. And, he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates as a catcher in the 14th round in 1970. He had never played a game in the outfield during his high school years. 7 years later, he has the modern era record for assists in right field with 26.
Unbelievable.
So, and he did have the Gold Gloves, and he was, total zone leader for 2 years in the outfield. And, sabermetrically, he gets dinged a little in the 80s, and that's a kind of a dubious number as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of his elite playing ability, he also blew out his knee senior year, which is why he didn't go to. He was earmarked for Michigan State, Penn State, a scholarship tailback in college. Had he not blown out his knee,
This guy's an athlete. I mean, he was just an athlete.
Three-sport athlete, and he was one of the highest prized athletes in Cincinnati. In Cincinnati prep circles when he blew out his knee. He had 2 knee surgeries senior year, and I think it's hard to find another athlete who could have accomplished what he did on his bad wheels.
And Dave, longevity.
Yeah.
How many? I mean, he played 15 years in the National League. Was it 19 total? 4 in the American?
He played 88, 89. Yeah, he played 4 years in the American League, and I believe 15 with from 73 to 87 in the National League, 88 to 91 in the American League. And it's also true that he was offered a contract in 1992. I mean, I'll give away a couple things in the book, but basically the Philadelphia Phillies offered him a contract, no cut, no release, contract bona fide deal in 92 that he passed on.
That's very interesting to know. So what else? So in essence, what you said earlier, the book was about at least one thing, thanking the fans. What any other message in general? Not to give things away. The book doesn't come out until April, right?
Yeah. What the book is about. Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
There have been interesting books over the years. Dave Halverson wrote a book called Teammates about Ted Williams, Bobby Durr, and a couple others on the Red Sox. And Eric Sherman wrote this wonderful book with Art Shamsky a couple years
Oh,
back.
great book.
Right?
Oh, yes.
And, it's about, it's Shamsky and Bud Harrelson and Jerry Kuzman just hopping in a car to go see an ailing Tom Seaver.
Yes.
And it's about the teammates and the brotherhood of those teammates. And there's really a dearth of books in that subgenre of baseball books. And, the more I worked with Dave, and I was actually given access to a number of his teammates and a number of his managers and a number of his coaches and a number of his high school classmates. So I ended up speaking with, maybe 75 people in kind of support of the book and, kind of fact-checking and whatnot. And it just became so clear that this Dave Parker story is one of relationships, and it's one of brotherhood. And that really changed the scope of, the great thing about writing books, and Jeff Pearlman says this all the time, that if your book, when you're done with your book, if it looks exactly the same as your book proposal that you present to the publishers, you did something wrong. Probably did something wrong.
Because it morphs. It morphs into something, continually morphs into something else, correct?
100%. And the more I would sit down, I'd spend an hour with Willie Randolph. I spent 2 hours with Dave Winfield. I spent 2 hours with Ken Colby, 3 hours with Pete Rose. At a certain point, we started talking about who was going to write the foreword. And then, it got to the extent of, wait a minute, I've spoken to all these people. You have all these people who want to contribute. Why don't we just have them each introduce a chapter? So
Cool.
20 of his teammates introduce 26 chapters.
Oh, that's great, Dave. That's terrific. What a great idea. I mean, yeah, that to me, because it again, it personalizes the book for those of us who watched him play. Okay, number one, those of us who were able to watch him in his career, and these other players who.
Yeah.
So to me, listen, yeah, absolutely going to get the book for sure, because that's just for me something that I like to. As a fan, you don't get this stuff, right? People like yourselves are the ones that we really, as fans, rely on to help us tell these stories.
Yep.
And so when you talk about, and he talks about relationships, and it's so key to anything that you do in the world, any job. It's all about relationships. That's my mantra. Whether you're working with kids or you're working with colleagues, younger or older, it's about getting to know each other. So did Dave? So to me, let me ask this question. Starting with obviously the Pirates. So that culture there allowed that team to pursue these relationships. Is that right? And he just continued throughout his career finding these teams?
I would say that once this book is published, I think baseball fans will have a new appreciation for how Joe Brown, the general manager of the Pirates for so many years during the 50s through the 70s, and Danny Murtaugh, how they managed this group of guys. And we're not just talking, and as Dave says, it's not just about one game in 1971. It's about how they fostered a family element and a family aspect for many, many years. And we hope that gets conveyed when people read the book.
Now, you say that, and my skeptical mind, not that it's really bad in terms of skepticism, is doesn't every sports professional team have a family atmosphere? So what's different?
Here's the thing,
question, right? Yeah.
More and more, they would tell me, and there'd be certain players who would come in, whether it was a Bill Robinson or a Bert Blyleven, that they would walk through those doors and be like, this atmosphere is nothing like any other place in baseball. John, he recalls a time where John Milner had just arrived, and they were, they had left spring training. They were on the flight. Parker's yapping with Phil Garner. They're arguing about nonsense, and half the team's egging on Cobra, and half the team's egging on Scrap Iron, and they're just going at it in this crazy snap fight. And Parker looked over for a moment and saw Milner had this look of glee on his face. And he was so thrilled to be in this kind of environment.
That's great. See, this is now you're getting me excited. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I love to read. I mean, this is the backstories that we don't get to know until you authors, which I admire immensely. I mean, from all the guests I've had on, um, to be able to have the access, like you said, to get the true story of these guys who we watched play. Dave wasn't on my team, but I remember watching him and knowing how good he was.
Yep.
And as a baseball fan, you love that stuff. I mean, as any fan, I mean, it could be any sport. I happen to be talking about my favorite sport, baseball, here. But it's just so cool to be able to have folks like yourself, again, tell these stories about these special athletes. So, we all know, in terms of the culture that we're living in now, with race, it's worse now than it ever has been. What did Dave mention? Did you have information in the book about what he went through with regards to race?
We go through a lot of that. We talk about Parker grew up in an integrated environment, or at least he spent his high school years in an integrated environment. His high school was probably, on any given year, 55-45, either way. And he had teachers, he tells me, and from what I learned from the half a dozen classmates that I spoke with, and the teachers that I spoke with, that it was this amazing atmosphere. I mean, he grew up in an atmosphere that he was, all the children were beloved by the teachers, and for the most part, there was minor high school drama here and there, but from talking with the teachers, that the teachers looked out for all the kids. They treated all the children like their own, and they just absolutely loved their high school years, And as for Parker, he, from what I understood and what I learned, basically, if he had wanted to run for class president, he would have won.
Mm-hmm.
And he was enormously popular in Cincinnati. He was enormously popular with the classmates and the players, black and white, and he just had a fantastic high school life.
So
race doesn't really play into it all that much, although the book begins, the first chapter begins at a student sit-in in the wake of the Martin Luther King assassination.
Mm-hmm.
And what we learn is that the teachers and the administration did not deter the students at all. They told you, go out, and do your thing. And they allowed the teenagers the freedom to express themselves. And
which was rare back in those days.
It was very rare. Quarter Technical High School in Cincinnati was indeed a special place from everyone that told me, and that's kind of where the book begins. That Parker comes from a place of not unlike that old TV show Room 222, if you remember.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
That was Quarter Tech.
Cool.
And it was very much like that. And other than one teacher who was kind of a stickler for the rules, Parker kind of got to do whatever he wanted to do, and he enjoyed going to school every single day. And that's kind of what formed the basis of his life, that he was never, race wasn't the forefront of his mind, until it was when he got into a couple of the southern minor league towns.
Right.
But for the most part, it's not from the place he came from. He wasn't defined by it entering his minor league career.
Okay, well that's interesting. Well, that did he face it? A couple things. Did he mention? Should we not mention this and save it for the people to read the book about his hero? Who did he admire growing up?
Oh, he loved Jim Brown. He was Dave Parker. If Dave Parker did not get injured in his first game as a first game senior year of high school, he would have gone to Ohio State.
Wow.
He still considers himself a football player.
He does.
He's a football player who just happened to have a Hall of Fame career.
Very cool. Very cool. So no issues with race as a black man in his 70s with the Pirates.
Well, we're not going to give away too much, but
Don't. Yeah, that's okay.
everybody knows that things got a little, he ran into some issues in late in the 70s, and that's kind of, it really doesn't define. I mean, he had some issues in '72 with the Salem Pirates when they played in Salem, Virginia, and he had some very interesting white teammates who stood up for him, and that was the other thing, that when he was on that team, when they faced racism, the teammates, it wasn't just a possible tale of Pee Wee Reese throwing his arm around Jackie Robinson. It was white players who nearly got into fistfights with racists defending Dave Parker and his teammate, or walking out of restaurants when they were kind of acting like we can't serve him here, and then he's like, what are you talking about? It's 1972, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where he faced it the most. And then afterwards, it was, the atmosphere of the Pittsburgh Pirates where an issue. There was a lot of harmony that was fostered by, again, Joe Brown and Danny Murtaugh, and then later by Banner.
Terrific. All right, last thing, he's got a foundation. He was living with Parkinson's, is that right?
That's correct.
Because I did see it was a 30 for 30, wasn't it, on Dave?
Yeah, it was the MLB Network had put together a 90-minute documentary, The Cobra Twilight, which was absolutely tremendous.
Yes.
And which I was blessed to have participated in. But they talked a lot. That was the thing, and we can end on this, is basically that they did such a tremendous job with, chronicling Parker's, struggles with Parkinson's. I mean, that was, pictures worth 1,000 words. They had a million pictures in there of what Dave deals with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And they did an amazing job. And now he has the Dave Parker 39 Foundation, which is they're searching for a cure, and then they're always raising money to continue that fight.
Well, listen, he sounds good. He looks pretty darn good too. How old is Dave now?
He's 60. He's going to be 70. He's going to be 70 this year.
All right. Well, let's hope we have him around for a lot longer, because again, he seems like he's just very thankful where he got to play baseball. He again wrote the book for the fans, as you said, and hopefully I get to meet him someday and thank him for allowing me to watch him. It's
I will definitely.
As a baseball fan,
Yeah, and he loves the fans, and he loves interacting, and we're probably going to be at Cincinnati. It's not etched in stone yet, but we're most likely going to be at Cincinnati in the first week of the season.
Good. Okay. Terrific. And we can pre-order the book, right, Dave?
Pre-order the book on Amazon. That's correct, or you can go to the University of Nebraska Press website. Okay.
Do you do any book signings virtually?
Virtually, we're still coordinating all the details.
Okay.
But you can hit me up at InStream Sports on Twitter. My DM's open, and ask any questions, and I'm happy to figure something out.
Terrific. Dave Jordan, terrific, my friend. This was awesome. I can't wait to get the book. It sounds like you had a good time doing it. And God bless you for taking all that time and writing it. And again, as baseball fans, read about this terrific gentleman who played baseball and who loves to be around people and interact. I haven't read the book, but just talking to you, folks, you got to get the book. I know every baseball fan will love it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Dave, listen, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
It's had a blast.
I really appreciate it, and best of luck to you in your future endeavors and with the book coming out.
Great. Thanks so much. Take care, man.
Take care.
Bye.
Well, I sure can't wait to read the book. That's great. The way Dave talked about it was just phenomenal. And what it took for him to write the book and talk to all these people. And again, if you read Eric Sherman's book he wrote with Art Shamsky about the the trip out to go see Tom Seaver in the championship after they reminisced about the championship year. in '69, and then decided to go out and see Tom. Game similar situation with David and Dave Parker. So looking forward to get the book. And now we're looking forward to talking with Sarah Sanchez about the Chicago Cubs. Look at some questions for Sarah about what she thinks they're going to do. There were some questions about before the season started, after the season ended, where some of these guys were going to end up, and they ended up basically staying put in Chicago. And it seems to me that they've got a really good core group of players. I just question the starting pitching, and I'm going to warn her about Jake Arrieta because Jake Arrieta did really basically nothing for the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't think he's got anything left. Now watch him go to Chicago and go back to his old form as a Cub and win 15 games. That'll just piss off a lot of people into the Philadelphia area. That's for damn sure. Us Phillies fans. So while we're waiting for Sarah, let me give you a little bit of information about my buddy, Real Captain Lou. Real Captain Lou on Wednesday, that's tomorrow, on his Captain Lou Extravaganza, 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on 12 on Sports and Zingo TV, Channel 761. I'm annoyed, I'm angry, I'm jealous. He got Ron Duguay of the Rangers to come on. I wanted to get Ron Duguay of the Rangers. I was a Ron Duguay fan. I love Ron Duguay. So I'm going to have to see if I can get Ron Duguay on my show. But he's got Ron Duguay on 8:15. And he also played for the Detroit Red Wings, so that's really why he's there, because Lou is in Michigan. And he's got Chris Mancuso, C. Mancuso, 9797, talking NHL and NFL. And they're talking about the new contract that Dak Prescott got today and a little bit of March Madness. So looking forward to Lou's show tomorrow. And let me give you a little update on my show next week as we wait for Sarah to give me a call. So next week, we continue the baseball roundup, MLB roundup, with Jake Reiner talking about the Dodgers. And then we go to Tim Britton talking about the New York Mets. And then we follow the New York theme with a conversation with folks from Blue Shirts Nation about the Rangers and the NHL and the division that the Rangers are in, this Eastern Division. And then Andrew Moranis talking about his book about Glenn Burke, for a first openly gay Major League Baseball player. So that's the roundup for next week. Another great lineup of guests. I hope you'll tune in. And Sarah is calling in right now. And look forward to talking to her about them Chicago Cubs. Sarah, I'm going to give her, let's give her a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Not there. Oh, my countdown was off. Oh my gosh. But she's calling in. Patience is what's needed sometimes when you do these things. Get our guests coming on. They're busy too, so they're giving you their time, so I'm always patient with my guests if they can't call in when we want them to call in. It's quite okay, because we're going to have a nice conversation and look forward to that. Speaking of conversation and guests calling in, I'm hoping that I will tell you that in April, I was able to secure one of the captains from Wicked Tuna, Captain Bob. He'll be coming on in April. March the 23rd, I will have recorded interviews from Matt Gelb, a Philadelphia Phillies reporter, and 76ers play-by-play man Mark Zumoff. Mark and I are talking next week. And those interviews will be on when I am on vacation that week. So those should be. Well, I talked to Matt. Matt had some really good information about the Phillies. Um, Anyone Wood is a beat writer for sure. He was on his way home. Oh, here comes Sarah. Hi, Sarah. How are you? This is Mitch.
I'm good. I'm sorry I'm a couple minutes late. I accidentally typoed this number.
That's okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. How's life in the Chicago area these days? Are you there?
I am, and it was lovely today. It was like 67 degrees, just walking around, enjoying the sun a little bit. It's not going to be that way for the next week or so, but it was nice to have a warm day here in the Windy City.
I know. We had the same weather. It was 67 degrees out there this afternoon. It was just, oh, yes, spring, which means what, Sarah? Sarah, which means what? It means
baseball, man.
Yeah, you
baseball.
got it. You got it. So, Sarah, quick question. Where do you live out there? Do you live in the city itself?
Yeah, I live just a few blocks from Wrigley Field. So
man,
I'm walking distance from my cubbies.
Lucky. I asked that only because I lived in Chicago for several years, outside of Chicago, in Des Plaines for several years.
Oh, yeah.
I worked in Skokie at the JCC there. My wife worked for the Irving Park YMCA. So, yeah, Chicago folks. So, yeah. So Sarah, your Cubbies. Listen, who didn't love? I loved going to Wrigley Field. It was, there's nothing like it. Lucky to have been able to go to many games there. So you're lucky to be able to walk to the darn games. You son of a gun, you. That's so awesome. So tell me about the team here. So they finished 34-26 last year. Lost to the Marlins in the wild card. You have a team that is not sure they were going to be there intact, but they are pretty much intact from last year in the infield. And we'll talk about that. I'm sorry you have Jake Arrieta back because he's stunk with us in the Phillies.
Oh, I am not. I'm so excited for the return of Jake Arrieta, but we can get into it if you want.
We'll get into it. He was just not. I mean, never mind. We'll get into him later. You can see how enthused I am that he's not here. I am enthused. Your infield, it looks like you only have one position being battled out, and your outfield is pretty well set. So, and fans are going to be allowed in. 8,300 fans are going to be allowed in. So it looks pretty good. So let's talk about the outfield first. It's easy. You got Peterson, Happ, and Hayward. You're set there, aren't you?
Yeah, I think the outfield is in pretty good shape, and don't forget they also signed Jake Marisnick to a one-year deal, so he provides some speed and some late-inning flexibility if they want to put him out in center or spell Jason Hayward, gives them a little bit of a platoon situation there.
Yeah, but listen, it's nice to have. Listen, Peterson, if he can do half of what he did with the Dodgers, or even 3/4 of what he did with the Dodgers when he first came up, that's a pretty decent hitting outfield, don't you think?
Oh, it absolutely is. The most interesting thing about that outfield, well, there's a couple, but as far as Peterson is concerned, is that David Ross has already said he will get a chance to face both sides of pitching out here. So, he was pretty much a platoon bat for the Dodgers. He never really got a chance to face left-handed pitching. His splits against lefties are pretty terrible. But the Cubs are going to give him a shot. They're going to let him face both righties and lefties and see if he can get those numbers up. And, I'm here for it. I think that it's hard for some of these young players to prove that they are viable against both righties and lefties when they've been a platoon bat since the day they came up. So I'm excited to see what Jock Peterson can do in a full-time role. And like I said, if that doesn't work out for some reason, they've got Jake Marisnick waiting there to take some of those at bats.
Right, and that depth is key. I mean, listen, they're all going to slump at some point, but you also have the wind blowing out sometimes too, so that's going to help him. Anybody who's got some kind of power at Wrigley Field, we all know that. But you're in good shape there, so good for you guys. Okay, so it looks like the infield is set, except for what I'm reading about is second base. You got Bodie and Horner competing for that second base job, right?
Yeah, Bodie Horner, and then they also signed Eric Sogard to a minor league deal. Look, I think that Nico sort of arriving in spring training has thrown the Cubs for a loop here. If you look at what Nico did in 2020, the glove certainly plays, but his offensive numbers were not very good. And the word on the street around here, at least, was that he was probably going to need to start in AAA, work on that bat a little bit, and that the Cubs would platoon David Bodie with somebody else. I would have guessed it's Eric Sogard based on that minor league deal in order to get Nico a little bit more time in AAA. Well, Nico Horner came up, and I don't know what the numbers are like as of yesterday, but he has just been mashing the ball, and he looks incredibly good at the plate. It looks like he put on a few pounds of pure muscle, and he is hitting the ball to all fields. He'll hit a home run, oppo on one pitch, and then the next at bat he'll come up and pull a ball the other way with authority. I mean, he looks really great. So I think that Nico has given the Cubs a lot to think about here about whether or not he needs to spend any time in AAA.
Wow, isn't that cool? I mean, and how old is Nico? How old is he? He's like 20?
23? Let me double check that.
Okay. I mean, but isn't it fun to watch these young kids come up? We had Alec Boehm last year come up, and we heard about him, but Sarah, he performed like nobody thought. It was great. And not just him and Nico, but I love watching these young players come up and Acuña's and the Albies. I mean, it's just so cool to watch these young kids come up. Isn't it fun to watch them?
Oh, it is a blast. And, most people probably don't remember this, but Nico Horner came up way earlier than anyone thought he would. He came up the year after he was drafted. He had not had any at-bats above AA, and he came up when Javi Baez and Addison Russell both got hurt down the stretch for the Cubs in 2019, and all he did was play shortstop with a slash line of 282, 305, 436 down the stretch. After literally they called him, he was sitting on his couch watching the game. They were like, hey, we need you to come be our big league shortstop in September.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's so fun because he's got the talent, and like you said, he's smashing the ball now. It's fun to be able to watch, especially now. These guys compete. Listen, you've got two decent players, and again, Sogard as a backup perhaps, but it's nothing to worry about. It's not like you have. It's not like you have. For instance, if you have no relief help in the bullpen, and you're like the Phillies did last year, it's like, who the hell's going to finish a game? They didn't know at the beginning, and they didn't know at the end.
Right.
Thank God it was only 60 games. I think there would be a lot of people jumping off the bridges here if it was a 160 game schedule last year with this Phillies bullpen. Oh my God. But yeah, to have depth at a position like that is great. Third base, shortstop, first base, you're all set.
Oh yeah. I mean, you mentioned it at the top of the show. The Cubs are running it back again. I'm not convinced that they will stick with this group through the entirety of the season. I think they would have to get off to a red-hot start and really look like they were in a commanding position in the division to keep the front office from trying to trade at least one of these guys. The Cubs have a lot of players who are in their walk year, right?
Yes,
and if you don't get them extended, this is really your last chance to turn them into anything. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I can't imagine if they're just kind of middling around 500 in July that they're going to just stick with this. I think you can look for whoever's gotten off to the hottest start to be traded.
Right, and I want to get into this division last because I kind of think it's wide open, but we'll get into that in a minute. Your relief pitchers, is Craig Kimbrell too old, or is he gonna do what he needs to do as the closer? I mean, you got Brandon Workman from the Phillies. He was okay, but again, not too impressed. I was reading today, looking at your depth chart of Chafin, Tepera, and Winkler. In terms of the guys who are pretty much set, how do you feel about that relief corps right there?
Well, a couple of things. So my concerns about Kimbrell don't have to do with age. What we noticed about him in 2019 and 2020 is that when his mechanics are off, that mix that he has really built a Hall of Fame worthy closer career on of his curveball and fastball does not play very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he's not mystifying guys with that curveball, they can just sit fastball, and those fastballs are going to be deposited over the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing to keep an eye on with Kimbrel is that curveball working? Are his mechanics right so that he's getting that kind of deception that he needs in order to strike guys out in the late innings? And I've only seen him pitch once in spring training so far. He kind of looked like 2019, early 2020 Kimbrel, which was not thrilling to me.
Right.
We'll see if they can fix that. It looks like they fixed it once before. The one person you didn't mention in your rundown there, who I think is rather important, is Rowan Wick, who had an injury to his oblique last season that was season ending. But before that, he really looked like the guy that was going to get all of the save opportunities that Craig Kimbrel wasn't going to get.
Oh, really?
And,
okay.
Rowan Wick got those save opportunities before he got hurt. He was kind of splitting them a little bit with Jeremy Jeffers there. And I sort of think that if something goes south with Kimbrel, Wick is the guy. They did not put him on the 60-day DL. He is still recovering a little bit, but I think that, he's got mid-90s fastball. He strikes out a lot of guys. I think Rowan Wick is probably a guy who could be a difference maker in that bullpen if he's healthy.
Well, that's, again, a good thing for you guys. Now, listen, Kimbrel, when he was at his peak, oh, my God, he was so good. I mean, he was just, he would mow it down the hitters. So, let's hope for your sake that they can fix him. And, listen, any combination of what was he throwing? Was he throwing like 97, 98 at his peak with the breaking pitch? Because you know what? You can do that in the ninth inning. You're gonna get a lot of saves.
Well, I don't know that his breaking stuff has ever been quite that fast. I'm actually trying to pull it up real quick here on Baseball Savant. But it's the deception that he generates between that four seam and that curveball, right? And so he has that four seam that really sits right around 96, 97. And then the curveball comes in at about 85, 86. And the deception that he gets from those two pitches is really how he makes his money. And so the question is, does he still have that 97 that he can pair with that 86, or are batters able to recognize it? Because I'm telling you, at the start of 2020, when Kimbrel looked broken, the thing that was broken is he was not getting zero, not one swings against his curveball. I went back and watched the first four relief appearances he had, and he did not have a single swing and miss on his curveball. He can't pitch in the major leagues without that.
You're right, especially him, because we've seen it.
Right.
All right. So I'm glad he's in the Central, but you're in the Central Division. All right, let's go to the rotation. Kyle Hendricks, Jake Arrieta. Thank God he's not here. Davies, Mills, and Alzolay. Here's why. What Arrieta here, Sarah, last year, he just seemed like, it almost seemed like he didn't want to be here. And even the year before, he didn't take responsibility for being inconsistent and not good. And that's what I think people didn't like about him here. And he never lived up to. Listen, they were hoping he would live up to what he was when he initially left the Cubs. Never got close. Never got close. So I wish you all the luck with Jake Arrieta. Tell me about the rest of your rotation.
Well, actually, so you're not gonna like me for this one, but I gotta point something out with Jake Arrieta that I think is the big difference between his time with the Cubs and his time with the Phillies. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about like 2015 when Jake Arrieta was the best pitcher in the history of baseball for the half of a season. I'm not talking about that Jake. That Jake is clearly not who we're talking about right now. But the big difference between 2017 Jake Arrieta and, say, 2019 Jake Arrieta is the Phillies defense and the Cubs defense. And one of the things that Jake Arrieta does better than anyone on the Cubs, including ground ball specialist Kyle Hendricks, is get a lot of ground balls. And if those ground balls are being fielded by Javi Baez, and Chris Bryant and Nico Horner, he does a lot better than if those ground balls are being fielded by a less savvy defense. And so, I've got the defensive rankings from 2020 on Fangraphs up here, and the Cubs were the third best defensive team in baseball, according to Fangraphs. The Phillies were 24th.
Yeah.
That's a lot of balls that wind up getting through that infield
Sarah,
that are
sucked.
outs on the Cubs and are hits for the Phillies, right?
Sarah, we sucked. It was terrible.
I'm not trying to say the Phillies sucked. Your listeners are going to hate me. But
the defense was terrible.
When the Cubs re-signed Jake, one of the things I went back to look at was I sort of wanted to know, is it going to help him to return to Wrigley Field? Is it going to help him to return to this Cubs team? And the biggest difference that I could find, and this stat actually blew my mind, that if you look at every Cub pitcher who qualified between 2016 and 2020, so they had enough innings in that 4-year span, every single one of them except Jose Quintana outperformed their fifth. And it's because they had that defense behind them making plays that allowed them to pitch better than their strikeouts and walks, right? And so I think Jake Arrieta is probably going to have a little bit of a resurgence with the Cubs, but I think a lot of that will have to do with the defense behind it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree. You have Chris Bryant and listen, the three of them, right? Who we don't know who's on second, but, with Rizzo and Baez and Bryant, that's a nice little infield you got to rely on. He doesn't have to feel the pressure to have to strike people out, which he couldn't do. He doesn't do, right?
Right.
He will probably, like you said, be more comfortable knowing that he's got these guys behind him who can make plays. So that makes sense. It makes sense.
I don't know if you remember Jake Arrieta's first season with the Phillies, but he kind of went off about the shifting that was being done there. Do you remember this locker room interview where he said that the shift was all wrong and that he blamed management for him giving up more hits than he should or whatever? I thought that was kind of a bad look on Jake's part, don't get me wrong, at the start of a long contract. But if you think about it from his perspective, he's thinking about all of those times that those used to be outs when he was throwing in front of Javi Baez, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Well, listen, are we going back? I wonder if we're going back to the our lovely Gabe Kapler era.
That was Kapler for sure, yeah. I'm not a fan.
I don't know that many people are. I'm glad he's out in San Francisco. Stay there. But yeah, he did. And that was, I think, like you just brought it up. I remember him dissing the people for that. And, you shouldn't really do that, Jake. You're not going to leave a nice taste in people's mouths when you do. However, we'll see. Listen, with you being on, I'm going to pay more attention to him when he pitches and see what happens and see what he's like. I just said before you came on, he's probably going to win 15 games this year, and I'll be really pissed off. But that's the way it goes. That's just baseball. That's just baseball. So a couple more things before we go. What are the Cubs' weaknesses? What do they have to improve upon?
They need to.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So let's talk about both this, the division. Do you think, what do they need to do to win the division? I think they'll be competitive. Do you?
Well, the weaknesses and what they need to do to win the division are two separate things. So the NL Central is a very weak division. Yes. I think that every time I look at different projections, whoever is projected to win it is projected to win it with 86 wins or 87 wins or something. So don't get me wrong, the Cubs are right there. They could be an 86-win team and they could win this division. But the thing that they're weak at, though, and this is why they traded Schwarber, well, not traded, but, they non-tendered Kyle Schwarber and turned him into Jock Peterson and some other types of moves like that, is they need to strike out less and they need to hit better with runners in scoring position. And if you have watched Cubs games, and I don't know if any of your listeners have watched Cubs games the last couple of years, it is uncanny how bad they are at driving in runs. They are not a good team when they have runners on second and third with one out. It's like you can almost just predict that there's not going to be runs scored in that situation. And so what they need to do is really focus on playing a little bit of small ball, getting those runs in, making sure that they're putting balls in play. They have too much swing and miss on this team, right? And you get strikeouts in those situations and nobody comes home.
Correct.
You get a ground ball, you get a sac fly, you at least get a run in.
Right.
So what I'm hoping is that the Cubs have mixed up their offense just enough that they're going to bring in some more of those runs. But I honestly believe that if this team doesn't look like they've shown some kind of spark, some kind of magic that has pushed them to the top of a weak division early, you're going to see somebody like a like a Chris Bryant or like a Javi Baez or, God, I can't even bring myself to say it, but it's also his luck year, and Anthony Rizzo or somebody dealt at the deadline and turned into whatever they can get for him.
Yeah, it's true. Listen, we've dealt with that before too here in Philly. A lot of swing and misses. So many strikeouts. But last year, I mean, again, short year, led fifth in the league in runs scored. So we were really excited. I mean, again, with Alec Bohm, with Harper, and when they're hitting, when they're on all cylinders and they're all healthy, this team can hit. JT, Didi, I mean, it was a fun team to watch. But except when you went to the bullpen, it was like, okay, turn this sucker off. I can't handle this shit. I said shit. I shouldn't have said that. It's okay. We're an internet station. We can do that. It was Sarah. You know what it was like. You know it was the worst bullpen in history. But it's something that they have to do. You're right. You can't leave guys out there second and third, man on third, one out, less than 2 outs. You got to get them in. So you're right. It's so frustrating to watch that over and over and over again. And let's hope, again, for the Cubs' sake, because I don't like the Cardinals. All my in-laws are Cardinal fans. Please, Sarah, do what you can.
We try.
I know. We got to beat the Cardinals. Because, listen, like you said, it's not a strong division this year. I think it's up for grabs. I mean, whether it's the Cubs, Cardinals, and the Brewers, I think that's it. I don't think there's anybody else that's going to vie for the division.
The Mets might do some damage. They've got a really nice offense there, and if some of their young pitching shows up, they could be okay. But no, it's a very weak division, and trust me, Cubs are gonna do whatever they can to beat the Cardinals. There's no more hated team in the city of Chicago.
I know, but you know what's fun about that though, Sarah? That is such an age-old rivalry. It's so much fun.
It is
to watch because they can't. I mean, listen, not that they can't stand, but it's a rivalry. It's a fun sports rivalry. It's never going to go away. You got two traditional teams, and it's just fun to know. I'm hoping that I can get to a Cubs Cardinals game this summer because we're heading out to the Midwest at some point, and I would love to either go to Busch or to Wrigley. I haven't gone back to been in Wrigley for years. So if we can arrange it, I'm going to try and get out there and try and do it with the Cardinals there. So, or I may go to the Cardinals games because I got nephews that are in St. Louis now. So I may end up going to Busch. So it'll be fun either way. That's what baseball's all about. It's just, and thank God we're going to be able to go. Hopefully we'll have more people there by July, and that'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I am looking forward to hopefully seeing a baseball game at Wrigley Field this year. I got my little register for the lottery for tickets for the partial opening thing, which I'm sure those tickets are going to be impossible to get. But step one, get vaccinated. Step two, go to Wrigley. That's my plan for the whole summer.
I'm getting my first shot tomorrow, so I'm excited.
Oh, congrats. That's great.
Yeah, thanks. Well, Sarah, listen, this has been terrific. You're very fun. I really appreciate you coming on. All this knowledge about the Cubbies. At some point, if I end up coming out there, I will see if I can meet, because I always like to try and meet. I've been doing this for a year and a half. Have met just a few of my guests, but I would love to meet you at some point and maybe hit a game at some point, just to sit down with somebody who loves baseball. It's always fun.
Absolutely. Definitely let me know if you're in Chicago.
I will do that. Sarah, thanks so much. Continue to be safe. Hope you get those tickets.
Thank you. I hope you get some tickets too. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that was a great roundup of the Cubs. Very excited, Sarah is. She's just very nice and full of energy, which is great. All right, folks, that's it for me tonight on the Burn with Mitch on 12 Ounce Sports. Appreciate you being here listening. Next week, tune in for Jake Reiner talking about the Dodgers, Tim Britton talking about the Mets, folks from Blue Shirts Nation talking about the Rangers, and Andrew Marinas talking about his book, Singled Out, a true story of Glenn Burke, who was the first openly gay Major League Baseball player. Looking forward to those guests. I hope you are too. I will give you my reaction to my shot next week. I will have it tomorrow, and I look forward to that. I appreciate you listening. Replays will be up in a few minutes. And thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.